since she made it, I guess in February or March, she finished it up, so it really got to me. I'll mention one thing about our cat. His name is Rudy. He is not a lap cat. He never sits in our laps. But for some reason, he's a show hog. I mean, he saw that camera there, and he wanted to be right front and center. He sat there the whole time. He's a character. Well, thank you all for coming. I thought maybe 4 or 5 of my friends would be here. I never imagined there would be so many of you. And just again, Verklempt, what was it? Verklempt. They used to say on Coffee Talk, discuss among yourselves, because it is all emotional. Well, as I mentioned in the film, that was recorded. That part was recorded in December. So I was saying that next year I'll be 79, but now we're in another year, and next year I'll be 80. So time rolls on, and I have, as it says, I haven't been writing much. I've been rereading my own work and thinking about it, and I've been fiddling with the Austin poem for years. I first self-published it in 1985, and then in 2000, when my complete, up to that point, complete Memories of Texas Towns and Cities book was published by Joe Bratcher and for his press, Post Publications here. Of course, the Austin poem was included in that, and in the meantime I had been revising on it through the years. And then after 2000, I continued to fiddle with it, never quite being happy with it. And I guess really everything I've written, I've not been happy with. I just keep going back and trying to get it right and never do. But I enjoy revising, trying to get it the way I really would like it. So at any rate, thinking about my writing, and especially the Austin poem, I've sort of come to the conscious awareness. This may have always been in my mind, but I maybe wasn't aware of it, that more than a poet, of course I always wanted to be a poet and to write poetry since I first wrote that sonnet. That was in 1959, I believe it was, yeah, 58 or 59. But what I've concluded is that more than a poet, I'm a historian. I did mention that I had a minor in history, and I don't know why I majored in English or history. People told me, well, this would be good. Why don't you do this? And I said, okay, because I didn't know anything about college. My family had never been to college. My dad only went as far as 8th grade. So I took a lot of history, and a lot of it really impressed me, especially the classes that I had here at UT. I had a course, a graduate course, from a professor named Sunder, and he took the place of Walter Prescott Webb. And he's basically unknown, Sunder is. Of course, Webb is the most famous historian, native Texan. And so I took this course on the West, and he assigned readings, but then you could pick a certain number of books. He had a list, and you would pick the books. Well, the ones that I picked to read had a tremendous impact on me, and at the time I didn't realize. But as the years went by, those books kept coming back into my writing and influencing writing. Especially a book by H.H. Bancroft, who wrote volumes and volumes on the western states. And there's one that's on New Mexico and Arizona. And that's the one that I read. And in there, that New Mexico section, he talked about an epic poem that was written about New Mexico. This was 1610. And so he quoted some of it in Spanish. And well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he. No, I think what it was, he had both the English translation and the Spanish in a footnote maybe. At any rate, years later, I incorporated that. I translated it myself. I didn't use the translation that Bancroft had. So I translated it myself, and I incorporated it into the Austin poem. So history has, I wrote all these poems about Texas towns and cities, and they're really history poems, about the places, about the people, about the events. And so I've just done that over and over in a lot of ways. And I realized that almost all my books are like that. And of course, I've written 3 books on jazz history. So I guess really I'm definitely more a historian than a poet. Or another way that I've thought about it is, I'm a historian who just happened to write in verse. And of course, nobody wants to read verse, so no one knows my history. But I was delighted. Susan Moorhead was just telling me earlier that she was really enjoying Austin because, it recalled places that she knew and friends that she knew, people, I assume professors and all that. And of course, places that are no longer here are in my poem. And one of the things that delighted me most, and where is Pam? Oh, there's Pam. Pam is my publisher, Alamo Bay Press. They published like 4 books of mine, and they reprinted the Austin book. And she works with Lowell Mick White, who is a genius for designing books. And what he did was he found, Dick has the original book. Do you have that in your hand?
Yeah.
This is the original book. And it was stupid, you couldn't see what it was, and I didn't put anything because I didn't want to mess up the map that goes front and back. This is 1887 map of Austin, just a wonderful map by Augustus Koch. And so you can see so much of Austin still in this 1887. You can see the university, and it's just wonderful. So I put it on the side, Austin and my name, and then my little prickly pear press that I started. Thanks, Nick.
Sure.
So Mick, he looked around and he found this map. And it tells in here what the date is. You can look it up if you're interested. I can't remember. This is a beautiful map, and that's the real colors of it. The Colorado blue running through the map. Of course, I don't think it's blue, but it's okay. Right? Maybe it is sometimes. But in this section the idea of the book is that it's based on the river streets in Austin. And I start on Sabine, which was the first place that I lived when I came here as a student in 1960. So that's, and then basically the last was San Gabriel, which is not far over here. And is this Rio Grande here?
Yeah.
Yeah, right here. Right. I lived there too. So I lived on most of these streets. If I didn't live on them, my friends did, or people that were important in Austin that I knew or knew of, like Walter Prescott Webb lived on Oasis Street. Well, anyway, but in the section on San Antonio Street, Mick White added these street maps for the different streets. And so you can, if you look, I mean, the print's very small. It's hard to, but with a magnifying glass you can see a little better. But even without the magnifying glass, I could see right here that it says Meth Student Center. That's not here anymore. The Methodist Student Center, which had an incredible impact on my life, because it was there in the Methodist Student Center that I saw a Methodist magazine called Motive. And in that magazine, they had a special issue on Chilean poetry. And I read it just weeks before we left for Chile. I was in the Chile-Texas exchange program. Greg Lipscomb and Susan Moorhead. Who else? Anyone else? Were in the program. And one of the poets was, well, you took it down, Joe. Was it here? Was Nicanor Parra.
No, he's up there.
And, oh, here it is, down here. It's Nicanor Parra. I translated his work, and Joe, again, supported me. So it was at that Methodist Center that I learned about him, and when we went to Chile, I looked him up. Thanks to Greg Lipscomb's former wife. She ran off with him. She put me in touch with put me in touch with Nicanor Parra. So, sorry?
There's Paul there.
So, the organizing principle are these streets, it seems like, from
Right.
table of contents.
Right.
That's a nice innovation. Did you just come up with it, or did it emerge?
Yeah, when I don't remember how it occurred to me. It may have been that someone told me that the river streets run through the campus in the same order that they do in the state.
Yeah.
And I may have said, oh, well, that makes sense, you know. But I mean, it just worked out that the Sabine was the first place that I lived. So it would make sense to start there. Although I don't start the poem there. I start with a proem, like a prologue to the whole book. But then Sabine, and then Red River, and on down. And then San Gabriel was the most important street for me, and it was the last. Recently, a fellow named Ray Spitzenberger, who is, he was an English teacher, and he taught in a little town in the area of Victoria and Houston. I can't remember now. He lives in East Bernard. I never heard of that place. At any rate, he published some poems in a magazine here in Austin called the Pawn Review, and some of you will remember that magazine. So one of my points, I'm getting totally off what I was going to do, but it doesn't matter. Ray Well, one of the poems I wrote on towns and places is Serbin, which is a windish settlement. Winds from Europe, Eastern Europe. And so I wrote a poem about that place, mainly about their church, about their Lutheran church. And it was somebody, I don't know who, found it in my book, and they wanted to reprint it in the Pedernales Electric. It's a magazine that goes to all people who are in that system. And so they reprint. They paid me $300 to reprint this. That's the most money I ever made. My first poem that I was paid for, the Colorado Quarterly paid me $3, and then the Electric Cooperative paid me $300. That was anyway. So, and then recently, the Windish Society contacted me, and they wanted to reprint it too. And I didn't charge them anything, and I wouldn't have charged the other place I had. So this Ray Spitzenberger saw the poem and wrote to me and was very interested, but he did tell me that he could have written a better poem because he is Windish. And that he, well, I guess he was born there. He grew up there, which makes sense, you know. But anyway, we started corresponding, and I've never seen him. We corresponded with the amazing, miraculous email. And to make the long story short, he has been reading my Austin poem that I sent to him, and he wrote back and he said, my favorite part so far, and I think he had skipped around, was in the San Gabriel section, the last section. And that really delighted me immediately because no one had ever mentioned that section to me. Very few people have mentioned anything about it. But anyway, so he quoted back to me the lines that he liked, especially. And that only happens maybe once or twice before. At a Lines and Mounds, or the first poem at Lines and Mounds, a student at ACC that I had, he found my book somehow, Lines and Mounds, and he read it, and one day he told me, he said, I really like your poem, and he quoted some lines from it, and that just blew my mind. No one had ever done that before. So anyway, Ray Spitzenberger liked these lines, and I'm gonna read those. I'll have to read a little bit before to set the context. You know, it's really hard to read from a long poem because you can't read the whole section. You know, it'd take too long. And then if you read a few stanzas or something, you don't know the context, so you know it doesn't really have much meaning in the overall construction of the work. Okay, so this is the San Gabriel River. It runs through Georgetown, and then there are two branches of it. But anyway, I talk about that. So this is the beginning of it, then I'll skip to the lines that he liked. With the North Fork out of its banks, as it pushed and gushed to gain the Gulf, felt another flood of past impressions gathering force from this final street, swept up, and all had branched out from it. Crossing the highway's concrete bridge, saw in the rushing and raging below broken limbs in the tops of trees, ragweed tips, and the Johnson grass grown tall along this river's edge, swaying in the relentless swollen wind of waters beyond the depth of any. Maria, there at home, awaiting word, had gotten through, had made it safely, so fearful after days of unceasing rain, with engines stalled and drivers trapped, then washed away, only caught up in, thrown off by all there was to sing, carried by memories beyond her reach, of years spent here before she came, men and women suddenly gone forever, in Shoal Creek's unimagined torrent, beneath the Colorado's deceptive calm, so happy to have her there, to worry, not for the hurt it would give to her, but to know her care still coursing in veins, as in those vows exchanged, after finding her on her far-off shores, on becoming with her a more than one, from a wedding set by roots and trails. Well, then I go on and talk about all kinds of history related to the river and just in general, Texas. The Spanish, the native Indians, racial conflict with blacks and whites, the church, the Catholic Church, all this, and then I come to this passage that I'm talking about, all of these rivers, thinking about it. But where did it all begin? For a start, have pinned it down to San Gabriel Street and that rented room. Yet how many others for reaching there, and beyond to all can barely measure. In 33, Mary sang of a Brazos branch, salt enough to pickle pork, never overflows its banks. But then in 34, its mouth obstructed by a narrow bar, the kind can always form from sand, lost it all, cattle and corn. And before that flood raging cholera, before that flood raging cholera, set them back by some 7 years. Here by the bills and the children ill, excuses when little or nothing came, thrown off course by divergent views, cowed by events might misrepresent, feared discount the thinnest tributary, north at Amon Carter's old Fort Worth, May Street's last full block at Berry, its tales told in sketches never finished, of each house with its own to tell, granddad's 3 for wife and daughters, the middle one bought by Alvin and Sis. From uptown moved the grandest for Nan. From Throckmorton near Standard Printing, mother and dad's shop in 40 before the war, when big outfits forced them out of business. Put to sleep there with Teddy on a paper bin. At that rented house, fed cards in a tiny press. From his backyard flew missions round the globe, dials and controls on apple crate, crayon drawn, grounded for taking off before the nap, for setting a match to the railway's right-of-way, smoke signals read by firemen doused the blaze. With tonsils removed, returned to those rooms where mother, half sick from the ether irked. A Shetland pony daddy paid for never arrived. Tuned in there to Sky King and ordered his ring, glowed in the dark and contained a secret code. Waited on Nan's corner lot, her double pond, where goldfish swam under water lily pads, her patio with its redwood monkey works, kung fu statue between 2 sticky cypress, his speech of water off the cast iron tongue. By dawn she had pulled the moss and weeds, stoked her black potbelly wood-burning stove, baked canned biscuits with dip in butter, fresh pecan sizzling in brown melted sugar, the incense of her cooking in the morning air. While across the street at the Timmons home, Kimbrough set her dial for the breakfast club, marched with Don McNeil round the dining table, his granny with napkin Coke or a Dr. Pepper, kneaded with George and Annie Ruth gone to Jesus. While his Uncle Jimmy couldn't hold a job, yet thrilled to his vivid lives of Pacific Isles. He is an Audie Murphy behind enemy lines, capturing single-handed a machine gun nest. Argonne Forest heroics boys clamored for. Not neighbor girls who knew horses and sex. Those climbed after in Nan's sprawling vitex. Fought with one day, made up the next. Games all began with choosing up sides. Chased them till nightfall when all called in. The hide and seek of their tanned aroma. So puzzled by how they could differ so. As at Halloween through the spookiest parties, led blindfolded then by their softer hands to feel wet grapes, they said, were eyeballs. Even María, seen by the light of their lamp, recognized later by those sights and sounds, before she had stitched her tapestry past, before Ovalle first heard her mandolin voice, her photo developed in that alchemical wash. Armies bought on Hemphill at the 5 and 10, in mask and costume turned pirate or goblin, nickel and dime dreams unawakened from, white theater stars yet showing the way, buses boarded to ad posters, stay and stay. Their don't get off still ringing in ears, with each day another drop or a trickle, a deeper immersion in the poem to be. All the rills collected to a roaring river, poured southward here to Esteban's city, rivulets forking or joining once more, then touching within here on San Gabriel, the miracle of how in each man may flow the brooks of when and wherever he's been, points north or south, though never to meet, met in the meaning of the memory string. A little too long. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What time did someone have?
4:45.
4:45. Can I go for a little longer? Someone, may have been Susan, someone was saying that there was one of the streets that reminded her of a lot of friends and people. I'd like to read from that. Incidentally, I guess I should have announced before I read that. One big problem with my poem is that I never use I. And so you don't know who's talking, but it's always me basically, unless I quote somebody else, and I'll put footmarks. I always like to give credit as a good historian. I like to give credit. I mentioned Mary in 33. That was 1833. That was Mary Austin, who came to Texas, and she was, I think, a cousin, I forgot now, of Stephen F. Austin. And so their sort of romance is in the poem too. They never married. but I think that they were very close. Romantically, I don't know about that. But anyway, so I'm quoting her at that point in the poem, and I'm talking about the effect of floods like the one in the San Gabriel, the effect on early settlers, like they would lose all their cattle and lose all their corn crop, so I'm often jumping back and forth, connecting, early Texas history or whatever, and I never referred to Stephen F. Austin, but I use his name Esteban, and it might have been Esteban, but I don't think so. At least I'm in Spanish, it would be Esteban, I think, but that with a B, that is the black man who came to Texas with Cabeza de Vaca, and his name apparently does have an accent on it. When I've seen it in Spanish in print, they put an accent on that. But anyway, I refer to him as Esteban. I mean, I pronounce it myself, and I think that he probably would have, but who knows? There's no one, we can't ask him that. Anyway, he appears in every section of the poem, every river, street. Stephen F. Austin comes in and out of the poem. So it's really a poem about him and the city. He's kind of the epic hero. But there are other heroes, and most of them are historians, like Walter Prescott Webb, another historian. You see, maybe I wrote down here. Lester Gladstone Bugbee. He was the one that was, his idea was to write a biography of Stephen F. Austin. He began to work on it, and he died very young, I think 31. And he was a teacher here at the university. He died young, and then Eugene Barker, and I have a lot about Barker, and he comes in, especially at the end of San Gabriel, because he did write the biography of Stephen F. Austin, and I lived just half a block from him, and could have gone to see him. I talk about this at the end of the poem, how I could have gone to see him, one of my heroes, and I didn't know that he lived there. But I didn't know a lot then. I didn't know much about Stephen F. Austin. So anyway, all those people show up in the poem. But this section is one of my favorite sections. It's Rio Grande, and for a lot of reasons, but primarily because I have so many friends that I talk about in there. And let's see, and I had planned that I would. Oh, let me just say. Because the Rio Grande section does really concern writers and artists at the time that I was here in 64, 65. And I'll read, you'll hear about some of those. And there's a quote in here by Carolyn Osborne, a local writer, short story writer. Some of you probably know her well. Well, you'll recognize when I get there, but it has to do with history and where you have been. I mean, it's like William Butler Yeats wrote a lot of poems as if he were an old man. I guess maybe I've done that in a way too. I'm always thinking about the past. When I self-published my collection called Taking Stock, I put a quote in. Epigraph at the beginning from John Graves, which I found in a book by Bill Whitman of essays on growing up in Texas. That was the title of the book, Growing Up in Texas. And so this is what Graves said, that there was a story of a bird that flew around backward. I don't know, that seems like it should be backwards, but anyway. That Graves probably knows better than I do. A bird that flew around backward because he didn't care where he was going. He only wanted to see where he had been. And that's sort of me. So that was why I put that in there. And Carolyn Osborne has, she says something very similar that I quote. Let's see. I told myself where to start. Well, here I'm talking about Dave Hickey, the writer who got a Genius Award, you know, the MacArthur Genius Awards later. And he was the editor of Riata, the student literary magazine. There was another fellow, he's not here, that also published in there. So Riata was the student literary magazine during the 60s. And I edited it after Dave Hickey. So Hickey was my mentor. So I'm talking about him and one of his stories. His best of a San Antonio TV newsman, a Jewish ambulance chaser, meets his match in the Mexican mother of George Guzman, who views his slow dying filmed and shown, unflinching in the face of a car wreck's jaws. Her son caught between them and pinned inside. For her, the reporters rerun a liturgical song, as if a priest garland Marlinburg offering it up. Such scenes Hickey meant for the magazines, the Atlantic, Harper's, the New Yorker, looked ever east for the acceptance signs, gave it all up after they had not arrived. His tale of a nude rancher dies in his tub, listed in McMurtry's In a Narrow Grave. Though merits a place on this roll call more for bringing them out as a Steven before. Lines and pages of native and immigrant alike, edited for Riata and given welcome at home, where artists and authors all gathered to meet, came in a steady stream to this river street. Prose and pigment talk overflowing the rooms. Their canvases hung where Mary Jane served as gracious host to the unwashed anarchist. Gilbert Shelton, showing off his latest t-shirt, featured Wonder Warthog's bristling snout, known too for drawing that satirical ranger, a stunted Harry with those holstered six guns. Such figures he had created for serial cartoons, their comments made in social and political fun, or with Harry pictured on that Ranger cover, peering up at a Mona Lisa, bore his ugly mug, in its caption spouting to the museum guard, he didn't know nothing about no modern art, but by God, he knew he liked what he saw. And Jackson's underground rag, the nation's first. Was it he who drew that so classic strip of the finger-licking good fried chicken of Maddox, who wields his racist wood, whose attitude toward his Negro cook gets radically adjusted by super good? But not before he rose battered and bruised by Lester's axe-handle response to protest, when a light bulb appears over Super's head with a black indelible ink will dye the bigot. And so many others, like Beeson and Osborne, Harold writing a matter of possession. In a room rented together summer of '63, around the block from the Robert E. Lee, from a bar Mort would regularly frequent after practice, walking by Littlefield on 21st, with its web-footed horses and Sudsea fountain, stopping for a long neck and a large sour pickle. Then home by watered lawns of frail landladies, tough customers those when came time to collect. Ran their musty boarding houses on the up and up, served creamed cauliflower and plenty of spuds, but couldn't hold out against the push for space. Another house and street forever displaced. Another memorial address made to give way. Buildings level won't matter to most, but will hold to their images all the more. Will not let go, though there's not a trace. Recall Harold's tale in Riata, winter of '63, of Sugar and Turpin, who are both released, just as Clarence's turn has come at last to claim as his throne their jail cell's chair, though its meaning lost with those not there. When he rips off the legs and kicks in the seat, burns them all in laughing hysterical defeat. And Carolyn's character in Ancient History, her early story from the spring issue of '64, crazy old Miss Agnes Doyle tells a prissy girl, hell no, she don't have no telephone, and all you need's a good switching. Declares of the two kinds of not knowing where you've been is worse. Hickey printing others by Branda and Giles, not then Jim's tale of Whitman's August day, came later with its landscape of Spanish brick, fountains and statuary ranging from lifeless to the bloody, mangled bodies in his wake. That's the Whitman shootings. But rather the poems of Wally Stover III and of Tom Whitbread, who sat one night on the edge of that daybed there out back, with a party at the Hickeys roaring inside. At the time, he had not been given it up, after a few speaking under the effects of what it was much too sleepy to catch. Perhaps of the trains he so truly loved, can still hear his lines from Triad, issue 3, take to task the Harper's reporter, distorter of these streets and of Texas Eagle's diner car. Wally last seen bound east on a campus shuttle, snaggletooth and needing the price of a string, said without a guitar it kept him from singing, wondered without his teeth as had his talent gone, or with less to begin with had been better off, picking up hints instead from all these others, or as Laurie Varney had written for a song, in these certain discoverable neighborhoods, here on Estevans River and his numbered streets. Any of you recognize some of that history? I mean, yes? What, for instance?
Well, I lived on Rio Grande for a good 2-3 years.
What?
Rio Grande.
Oh, okay.
And so my brother, who was in college also, had lived there before I did, on Rio Grande. And, you know, we have pictures of all of that.
Susan, did you recognize any of those people?
Some of it, yeah, of course, I know Carolyn.
Yeah.
Whitbread, not Whitbread.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah. Dick?
Yeah. Did you think the quality of Riata was amazingly high as far as the contents and the design of it?
Sorry?
The Riata.
Oh, Riata?
Yeah.
Did I have something to do with the design?
Well, didn't you think that the contents and the design were both remarkable for college publication?
Oh, yeah. Dave Hickey and I both as editors won honorable mention, first honorable mention in the Saturday Review,
Okay.
student magazine. award.
I have most of the copies of that at home.
Yeah, this really
And
is.
it's really something.
Yeah.
I still have one that has a beautiful drawing by Philip Trussell on the front of an angel, and I know who is the original one of my collectors.
I published, in the second issue I edited, I published some of Phil Trussell's drawings. Yeah, and the issue was reviewed by Professor, he's in the poem. I mean, yeah, he's in, what is his name? Malvern. What was it? Oscar Malvern. And he reviewed it in the Daily Texan, and he gave it a very good review. You know, the issue that I edited.
Yeah.
But he didn't like Philip Trussell's drawings. Phil didn't care. He didn't care. Chuck?
Yeah, I started college in '61, so I'm a little bit behind some of your history.
Well, I was a junior in '60. What?
60, yeah.
What? You were a freshman in '61?
61.
Oh, so you're.
But the part that I could connect with was, and I wanted to ask you if I understood you right, or maybe ask you to elaborate on it. Did you say that Richard Shelton's Wonder Warthog,
Gilbert Sheldon.
Gilbert
Sheldon.
that his, it was a satiric picture of a Texas Ranger, or did I mishear that? I thought that, I wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, well, he's a Texas Ranger, and he's got this long beard, and he's got these pistols in his holsters, you know, and he's looking up. It may not be that clear in the point, but he's looking up at a painting of Mona Lisa, except that Gilbert Shelton, of course, when he drew the whole thing, he made the face of Mona Lisa look like Harry Ranger. So Harry Ranger is looking at it, and he says, I don't know anything about modern, they would say modern, M-O-D-R-E-N, modern art, but I know I like what I see because it's himself. You know? He's looking. I don't know if that came through in the poem clear enough.
You mentioned Mary Austin. Is that the Mary Austin that wrote about the desert in California?
No.
It's a
No.
different
She, let's see.
I was just curious.
I know that she's a New Mexican writer, isn't it?
I think of her as
Yeah.
California. 'Cause
But,
that's what's the name of it?
Land of
yeah, it's a
Land of
different.
Little Rain, yeah.
Huh?
Land of Little Rain.
But this Mary Austin was related to Stephen F. Austin, I said her cousin. And she came here and she wrote, I've never read the book, but she wrote about Texas, about coming here and traveling, and I don't know why I never read it. I guess maybe I did look into it because I quote her. But what I did in another place was to I went to the Austin collection at the library. It's next door. It's another building, right? I guess it's still there. I haven't been to the new one. Anyway, they had a rare book that had a lot of information about her and Stephen F. Austin. And I work in, she was on a boat coming to Galveston, I think. And I describe all that. I don't remember, but I didn't get it from that book she wrote about Texas, but something else that I found. And at the end of the Rio Grande section, I stopped before I got to the end. But at the end, this is the part that I use, that I'm talking. Oh, you know, I think her name was Mary Austin Holly. Here I say Mary Holly. So I think there was an Austin in there, but maybe she was better known just as Mary Holly. So here it is. So I say, I entered, this is Stephen F. Austin writing a letter to Mary Holly, who's his cousin. I entered upon the busy stage of life with ideas which, had they been true, would have made this earth a paradise. Dreams of youth unpoisoned by ambition, my angel mother, kind-hearted father, my first standards of human nature. Wealth was not the incentive led me here. Ambition kindled its fires in my breast, but the flame was a mild and gentle one, consisting more of the wish to build up the others' fortunes and happiness, asylum for sufferers from selfish avarice, the mania for speculation. And you, my friend, how shall I ever thank you enough for venturing into this wilderness? How express the happiness of the 10 days' visit? Gardens and rosy bowers and ever-verdant groves, music books and intellectual amusements can all be ours. Millions could not buy them, but the right disposition with competence ensures them. I took all pieces from his correspondence and wove that into one statement. But a brilliant man. Of course, he's called the father of Texas, and I think he deserves it. Although I have a lot of criticism by other people that I quote, like one section where, I won't be able, I'd have to find it, I can't remember.
I think he was in favor of Texas stand with Mexico when the Civil War came. And so it would have been a different outcome if we followed his advice. But the issue was slavery, and Mexico had abolished slavery. So
yeah, I have a part in the poem where at the end of his life, I think he died in 35 or 36. He died before the fighting in Texas was. But he wrote something, and I don't remember who wrote it to whom he wrote it. And he regretted his stand on slavery, because he had, of course, he defended his the people that he brought here, and I had one place where I had him say he talks to the people in Mexico, and he tells them that the settlers something like that. So in other words, he was not that ahead of his time, but then at the end of his life he did change. He did write something that rejected his earlier position. Right. And I have a section, it reminds me, I have another section where he talks about
bring a slave into Mexico. So what they had to do at the border was sign a document saying.
Oh, you're right. What he told the Mexican government was they missed their slaves. I remember that's the way I wrote.
Right. Sam Houston was against the Confederacy, so there were some fairly progressive leaders.
Well, I think he definitely was, and Houston too.
He had a plantation.
John?
Houston had a plantation.
Did he have slaves?
My impression is he did.
Yeah,
He certainly had
remember
personal servants.
Yeah. I don't know about they do. I don't know Houston that much.
On another subject, I know all of these experiences are wonderful, but do you have one or two that just keep coming back to you, or very special moments where you felt a great sense of peace or connection?
If I felt
A great sense of peace or connection that you keep referring back to in your prose?
in my writing, I'm not sure.
Probably San Gabriel, since that was kind of an anchor for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean my memories of different places?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have so many memories and so many friends, and they all show up in my book. It's encyclopedic, you know. It's an encyclopedia.
It is.
They're all special.
Somebody told me once that, and maybe you can confirm or deny this, that Stephen F. Austin picked Austin for the state capitol and for the university because he saw it as a peaceful.
It's in my poem. María always said, "Yeah, it's in your poem, I know." Because I would always say, "Oh, it's in my poem."
The water coming through and the hills and then.
Yeah, he wanted to have a language school here. Yeah.
I wonder what he thinks of today's Austin.
Very, very good.
I have,
Yeah, I look at
María wants to go home, she just, I like us. I have 3 copies of my book. These are essays on Texas poets, generations of Texas poets. And I can't sell them, so I give them away. Here are 3 copies. Anybody want? You want one? You want one?
Other people want it. Somebody else want it?
No, I have one.
Well, thanks again for coming. Sorry I'm so long-winded